This is Steve Young for the Co-Roundtable. Here we are in April 2025, and just about everybody is talking about, complaining about, worrying about Donald Trump's proposals for restructuring the global economy based on charging tariffs for goods that either come from America or are imported into America. And so what kind of a person is Donald Trump? Why is he doing this? How does he think? About 22 years ago, I wrote this book called Moral Capitalism, in which I made a distinction, if you will, between moral capitalism and brute capitalism. And my observation is that Donald Trump, in his thinking about tariffs in particular, but other things, is a brute capitalist, not a moral capitalist. So I'd like to just take a minute and give you my sense of where this notion of brute capitalism comes from. And then you can do the reading, you can look it up, and you can see if Trump's thinking and what he proposes to do and his ambitions fit within the parameters of this concept of brute capitalism. I take it back to a thinker and writer in England, 1851, Herbert Spencer. Most people have forgotten about him, but he was, some people say, he was the first person to create the modern discipline of sociology. He wrote a book called Social Statics. And in that, he makes an assumption about the human person. Every human person that's ever been born, ever will be born, is that we are basically, I'm elaborating a little bit, but I think fairly, we are extension of the great apes. And just as our ancestors were great apes at some point of some kind, I don't know, but the evidence seems to be there. But the great apes, as with other members of the mammalian species, the animal kingdom, do not have a moral sense. Moral capitalism goes back to, I think, the thinking of particularly Adam Smith in 1776, who had written a book earlier saying that all human beings who've ever been born, whoever will be born, have a moral sense inside us. Now, whether we use it, whether we listen to it, what our morals are, those are different questions. But we have some sense within us about our relationships with other people. And we care, and we need people. Aristotle talked about this as we're a social being. So Spencer comes along and basically says this is not true. We are selfish beings. We are part of nature. So the rule for us, as it is for the animal kingdom, eat or be eaten, kill or be killed. This then got the name, this theory, in which he applied to politics, to economics, to culture, to families, to everything, as a natural law, as a law of nature. He even wrote a two-volume set of books on ethics, where he tries to square ethics with selfishness. It's an interesting challenge. Nobody reads it anymore. But after about the 1870s, I think, when his theory became fairly popular in England and then very popular in America as an opposition to Karl Marx and communism, the name social Darwinism was given to this philosophy, which in my reading was unfair to Charles Darwin, because Darwin actually wrote a book. Darwin's notion is survival of the fittest. That's evolution. It's the way we ultimately evolved back from protozoa in the oceans of 10 million years ago or whatever it was. But Darwin made the point that human beings made an evolutionary step different from our ape ancestors, which was the development of a conscience and a brain. Our brains are big. They work very differently than the brains of, I think, our closest relatives are chimpanzees or bonobos or something like that, but their brains are kind of small. But we have this other capacity, whatever you want to call it, conscience, relationship, quid pro quo, thinking about others, dealing with others. And Darwin wrote a separate book called The Descent of Man. His first book, The Origin of Species, is sort of, you could say, it's about evolution, just about that. He writes another book on the descent of man, arguing that we are different. There's something special about our species. Spencer didn't notice that. Now, Spencer's thinking there was an economist in England, Alfred Marshall, 1890, something like that, who wrote the first book on sort of microeconomics, which has influenced business and finance and chasing the money. And he came up with the theory of supply and demand curves, but marginal utility, a technical thing. But Marshall has an appendix to his book where he talks about how he was inspired by Herbert Spencer, social Darwinism. He's worried about marginal utility because it's rational self-interest. So from Marshall, we develop modern economics, modern finance, a theory of capitalism, that it all depends on making profit. It's just the cash flow. And my argument is that this represents a brutish instinct. It converts us into the devotees of money, which separates us from our best humanity, turns us more back into those great apes, where what Tennyson said, the law is red, the law of the jungle is red in teeth and claw, right? Are we humans supposed to be like that? So Trump, I think, in his desire to focus on power and on money, is really following social Darwinism, which then would imply he's a brute capitalist.